Tonight on CBC Vancouver News. Turning off the taps.
The situation is severe. We need people to turn their minds to a conservation mindset now.
Officials urge people in BC to cut back on water use as the province braces for severe drought. Plus, port strike over.
Tomorrow, the floodgates are going to be open, and this is going to be packed. Every truck's gone on the road.
Relief after port workers and their employers reach a deal. And the Nanaimo girl riding towards big dreams.
Maybe going to the Olympics.
She's 8 and one of Canada's top-ranked BMX riders.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Lien Yeung. Drought conditions have now escalated to the highest warning level in parts of BC. As Mira Baines reports, provincial officials are urging water conservation as 2/3 of the province's water basins are now at a level 4 or 5 drought.
The province is sounding the alarm about looming water scarcity.
The situation is severe. We need people to turn their minds to a conservation mindset now.
Emergency Management and Climate Readiness Minister Bowen Ma says more water restrictions may be put in place soon.
Water restrictions would come from local governments and First Nations, and we'll be speaking with all the mayors and chiefs and chairs this afternoon about the drought conditions that we're seeing and encouraging communities to escalate their water restrictions.
BC is still feeling the effects of drought from last fall. Conditions are dire as the province heads into the hottest, driest months of the year. BC uses a 6-level drought classification system to explain the severity and level of response to drought conditions. It ranges from 0 in light green, which is sufficient to meet socioeconomic and ecosystem needs, to level 5, shown in dark red. Dark red means a lack of water is having adverse impacts and will likely lead to water restrictions and regulatory action for businesses. This is what the province looks like now. Much of the province is already at level 4 and some parts at level 5, including Vancouver Island, northeastern BC, and Bulkley Lakes regions. On Vancouver Island, where drought concerns are the most severe, the Cowichan River levels are dropping. With so little water, there's concern about the fish. Most of BC has received rainfall over the past year between 40% and 85% of annual average precipitation. Rain could change the current trend.
It really is going to revolve around what will happen come September and October and whether we get the province-wide precipitation events such as things like atmospheric rivers. We do need big rainfall events.
The province is suggesting people restrict their own water use by taking shorter showers, watering their lawns less. So far, the BC Energy Regulator is requiring oil and gas operators to immediately suspend water diversions to the Peace and Liard River watersheds. Ma says a program is also in place to reimburse First Nations and local governments if they need to truck in water if the situation gets worse. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
The province is also warning it anticipates more extreme fire behavior as hundreds of wildfires burn across BC. Today, it revealed it has requested additional support from the federal government to fight the ever-changing conditions. And for more on this, we turn to CBC's Janella Hamilton, who joins me live now. So, Janella, our crews have their work cut out for them. What's the latest?
That's right, Leanne. It has been a really challenging season so far, with a total of 1.2 million hectares of land in BC already scorched by wildfires. The latest data shows 345 wildfires are still burning in our province. Pardon me, since that graphic has been made, that number has actually grown to 360 wildfires now, with more of half of those considered out of control. Data from the BC Wildfire Service shows that most of the wildfires of note are currently situated in the center of the province, where the Caribou, Prince George, and Northwest fire centers converge. Minister of Emergency Management Bowen Ma says alerts have been expanded in those fire centers. In particular, an evacuation order has been issued for Lucas Lake, covering all properties at the east end of the Nechako Reservoir. The 625-hectare Peacock Creek near Houston has also prompted an alert for all properties on Buck Flats Road, and evacuation orders have been expanded for the 4,200-hectare Parrot Lookout Fire as well. Most of these fires have been caused by lightning.
And of those 51,000 strikes, 76 of them have been in the Prince George and Northwest Fire Centers. And in both of those areas, both the areas we'll be touching on today, we have seen lightning sort of develop each day and start new fires in the same general area where we already have fire on the landscape, which is very challenging for our ground resources, for our response operations, because it shifts our winds. It brings significant fire behavior, and in many cases over the course of the last 7 days, it has not come with very much rain, if any rain at all. So the fire conditions that we're faced with in the northern half of the province and starting to see it also in the south, they are extreme.
Some really tough conditions there, Janella. And we know the province is now asking for additional help. What does that look like?
Well, Leanne, wildfire officials say they have already been in talks with Bill Blair, Minister of Emergency Preparedness in Ottawa. Ottawa says it is ready to deploy the needed resources, including military assistance for airlift evacuations from remote locations, and members of the military trained as firefighters who can provide help to keep blazes from reigniting once they've been put out. The Canadian Coast Guard is also mobilizing support for affected coastal communities, and Parks Canada is also ready to provide aid. On top of that, the province says it has requested up to 1,000 additional international personnel over the next few weeks.
All right, thank you for that. Thanks for that, Janella. Meanwhile, there's a positive update from officials about a wildfire that broke out in North Vancouver yesterday.
We saw minimal growth overnight, and the fire is responding well to our continued suppression activities.
Metro Vancouver says air crews support those on the ground fighting the fire. It's covering 0.3 hectares. The exact cause remains under investigation, though crews did find evidence of lightning activity at the site. More than 700 people reported smoke at Seymour River yesterday. Officials say those calls did help crews get to the fire quickly, and they are asking people to remain vigilant. And joining us for the very first time, science and climate specialist Darius Mandavi is here. Welcome. Thank you for joining us on the show. We'll be seeing you for the next year while Johanna's away, right?
That's right. Thanks, Leanne. Happy to be here. I do wish I was bringing better news. I know with that fire that we were talking about, the most likely cause was lightning. I know we've seen clear skies lately over the last few days. It was likely caused over the weekend when we saw a few errant lightning strikes in the North Vancouver area, but we can't be that surprised. This is the drought map the province just released today. We can see that the Metro Vancouver area and the whole lower mainland are all experiencing level 4 drought, meaning that we're extremely dry and expecting those conditions to continue. The same level of drought that we've seen in areas where we've seen really active fires throughout the province. And we can't be that surprised. If we look here, we can see that we've seen 75 to 85% less rainfall than we usually do this time of year across the lower mainland area. Now, if we look at the watches and warnings active across the province, we can see we have severe thunderstorm watches and warnings still active in the northern parts of the province. But really what's dominating the watches and warnings are these smoky skies that we're seeing across the central and northern parts of the province where the fires are highly active.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Darius. We'll check in with you with more on the weather in a little bit. A tentative deal has been reached in the BC port strike that stopped shipments for nearly 2 weeks. It comes after a federal mediator proposed recommendations to end the labor dispute between Longshore workers and the BC Maritime Employers Association. Now, as Renee Filipponi shows us, the focus is on getting things moving again.
Not long after the Ottawa imposed deadline, picket lines started to come down. The tentative agreement reached after nearly 2 weeks of job action. In a statement, the BC Maritime Employers Association says the 4-year deal recognizes the skills and efforts of BC's waterfront workforce. According to a manufacturers industry group, the strike is estimated to have cost at least $500 million a day in disrupted trade. Business leaders are relieved it appears to be over.
It fuels prices, it fuels inflation for both Canadians and businesses, and it also brings our reputation as a trading nation into question.
In a statement, the Labour Minister thanked the union and the employer, saying the scale of the disruption has been significant. The parties were given a proposal from a federal mediator yesterday and had 24 hours to make a decision.
The beauty of this mechanism is that once there's something reasonable on the table, if one party refuses and one party accepts, the party that refuses is going to really feel the heat.
The details have not been released. The union was asking for wage increases and protection against contracting out and automation. The agreement still needs to be ratified by both sides, but workers were back on the job this afternoon. It will take weeks to clear the backlog of containers. This trucking company owner says he has been patient as the two sides work things out, but it's time to get back to reality.
We're already panicking. We got a call from the ports that the reservations are opened up, and tomorrow the floodgates are going to be open, and this is going to be packed. Every truck's gone on the road.
Business leaders are now asking the government to take steps to ensure that future waterfront disputes don't further affect the supply chain. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
Hollywood film and TV actors joined striking writers after contract talks collapsed last night. The move effectively set off an industry-wide shutdown, including here in BC. And as Deanna Sumanak-Johnson explains, actors want their contracts to keep up with all the recent changes in media.
160,000 actors, from Oscar winners to people with small parts on television series, are about to walk off the job, and some are already picketing. Some of the key issues they're striking about: payment for actors when their work plays on streaming platforms, and limits on how studios can use artificial intelligence to reproduce actors' faces and voices. Big names like Matt Damon, Meryl Streep, and Jessica Chastain say they stand with their union, which is led by Fran Drescher.
If we don't stand tall right now, we are all going to be in trouble. We are all going to be in jeopardy. So we came together in strength and solidarity and unity with the largest strike authorization vote in our union's history.
Now, this strike on its own would be bad enough, but combined with the already ongoing writers' strike, it could bring Hollywood to its knees.
We have a greater purpose than any of us could have ever imagined.
Popular shows like The Last of Us and White Lotus could have their new seasons delayed by months. It's also bad news for thousands of Canadians who work on film sets in this country. If the film's lead actors are American, production would have to stop.
Painters, electricians, production designers, those kinds of artists and artisans have been out of work because series have been shut down because of the writer's strike. Well, now, any production that has an American actor in it is going to be shut down, and that's pretty much everything.
How could this affect what you see on your television? We've already seen talk shows go into repeats because of writer's strike. Now, this could mean no new episodes or no new seasons of TV shows that were about to start production. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
The international sentencing for the man who sexually extorted BC teenager Amanda Todd has been delayed because the court says it needs more information. The court in Amsterdam was expected to announce how it would convert Aidan Coban's 13-year Canadian sentence to fit Dutch standards. But the judges say they want clarification about the most likely date Coban would be released if he served his sentence in Canada. A BC Supreme Court judge sentenced Coban to 13 years in prison for crimes against Amanda Todd, who was blackmailed into exposing herself online.
The one thing I see that if Mr. Coban gets 0 years is that it sends a horrible message out there that offenders could exploit children in Canada and get away with it.
Coban is already serving an 11-year sentence in the Netherlands for similar crimes against 33 other victims when he was extradited to Canada to face trial in Todd's case. No word yet on when the case will return to court in Amsterdam. As Surrey's urban Indigenous population soars to among the highest in all of BC, advocates and residents say more resources are needed, starting with more affordable housing. Our Indigenous Affairs reporter Wamish Hamilton has that story.
My son specifically had some support needs that he needed
So he decided to move down here where he could receive that support like much sooner.
Crystal Wilson and her 3 children moved to Surrey from Kitimat 8 years ago. She found the city had better access to resources for her kids, job opportunities, and stable housing. It was an easy choice.
Back then, we had like a pretty decent 4-bedroom, and I think we paid $1,300 for it. So it was definitely at the most affordable time. Like now, it's much higher than that, and we're in a place where we've lived for probably 3 years, and I can't even think of moving.
Surrey is now home, she says, despite rising rents. It's the reality facing some of the city's 16,000 urban Indigenous residents. Data from the Surrey Urban Indigenous Leadership Committee shows Surrey has one of the largest urban Indigenous populations in BC, and that population is growing. But it's not without challenges.
Previously, we saw a lot of people coming to Surrey for affordability. That's not the case anymore. The housing is a crisis now in Surrey, but affordability was there, job opportunities were there, childcare was there. Unfortunately, that's changed quite a bit now with the growth in Surrey. Access to those things is just not the same as it used to be.
Painter says families are turning to them for support, but it's difficult to offer adequate help to everyone who is in need.
We lack those resources and we lack the infrastructure in the city to do that work. We are seeing still a lot of homelessness, and that looks like families, right? Families with children sleeping in cars.
Surrey's 2022 Housing Needs Report showed that Surrey's Indigenous population is comparable to Vancouver's, but Surrey has 270 Indigenous non-market housing units, compared to Vancouver's more than 1,400. In an email, the City of Surrey says that providing non-market social housing is the responsibility of the provincial and federal governments, but that it partners with them to help provide support. As for Wilson, she's hoping all levels of government will come together to make living in Surrey more accessible and affordable for everyone. Wamish Hamilton, CBC News, Surrey.
Well, Michelin restaurant inspectors spend all year on the road uncovering the best restaurants in every city. And just ahead of more Michelin stars being revealed later this fall in Vancouver, the Culinary Guide is adding 10 more restaurants to its recommended list. Among them, Karma Indian Bistro in Kitsilano, Montenobu Udon on East Hastings Street, Farmer's Apprentice, which creates dishes using locally sourced produce, and Folk, with its fully plant-based menu. The 10 new additions are on the Michelin Guide's website, along with 60 other Vancouver restaurants. Let's go back now to our top story on the drought that is gripping parts of our province. Some communities have already seen seasonal water restrictions in place, and soon we could see that extend to more municipalities. BC Emergency Management Minister Bowen Ma says we should all start taking water-saving measures now. And for more insight, we're joined now live by Professor John Richardson, a UBC freshwater scientist. So, Professor, thanks first of all for joining us.
Yeah, pleasure.
And so just how bad is the situation out there, and how seriously should all of us be taking the warnings from the province?
Oh, I think we should be very serious about this. You probably heard from the River Forecast Center that this is probably the driest it's been this early in the season on record. Now, given that we don't have records that go back hundreds of years, at least in terms of hard data, but this is pretty unprecedented. And the other thing to remember is that we have had 15 months of below average precipitation, which meant that our snowpack was smaller than usual. So most of those communities like Vancouver that depend on snowmelt for summer inputs to reservoirs, that's gone. And so the only inputs we'll get now will be if we get some rain. And so if we have a situation like last fall where the rains didn't begin until mid-October, we could be in really serious situations. So we really do need to be thinking about the conservation of water, because the only thing we can really do right now is conserve our use. And so we need to minimize the use of the water that's sitting in the reservoirs, because there isn't going to be any new water until the rains come.
So talking about conserving water, so the province is recommending shorter showers, only running your dishwasher when the load is full. If everyone in BC did take some of these measures, what kind of a difference could we make?
Well, I don't have a quantitative answer for you, but all of those things help. And when you multiply each individual's contribution to that by reducing their water use by the millions of people in the province, it does turn into a fairly big number in terms of volume. Given that we have to use that same water for drinking, cooking, bathing, flushing, firefighting, etc., it becomes a little bit frivolous to be thinking about things like long hot showers, although we all like that. Same sort of thing with watering lawns. Beyond the individual's use of water, we also need to be thinking about how do municipalities use water, as well as agriculture and industry. And so everybody has to be participating in this. It's really a team effort, because otherwise we're just not going to have water by the time the summer ends. So while we all like the hot, dry conditions and we're all enjoying it, the reality is we need rain.
Yes, we certainly do. I can't really remember the last time I saw the streets of Vancouver soak. So I'm interested in knowing as well, how up to date are we in terms of the infrastructure with water storage and supply?
Yeah, that's the real challenge, is that it's a very long-term plan to increase infrastructure. So if one starts thinking about where does the water come from, we have two really good reservoirs in Seymour and Capilano. The Coquitlam Reservoir has only just really become accessible as a drinking water supply. So many people will know that that's actually has been a BC hydro generating facility for a long time. And so Metro Vancouver has acquired the rights to the water there. If we think where else would we go, we'd be looking at, say, Alouette Lake, Stave Lake. Again, both of those are BC hydro power generating places. So we'd have to think about where's that water going to come from. We really can't raise the dams on the reservoirs very easily, because they're concrete reservoirs or dams. And so the challenge is really, where's the water going to come from? And it's probably going to come from further up the valley in the mountains.
In the meantime, we're all going to try and conserve water and really do our rain dance, hey? All right, thank you so much for that, UBC professor John Richardson.
Sure.
The Bulkley-Nechako wildfire near Vanderhoof has claimed a popular hiking trail. Up next, how a filmmaker captured the rugged magic weeks before it vanished. And thanks for sticking with us during our commercial-free live stream. At a Halifax hospital, Indigenous mothers and their newborns can now be smudged. A Mi'kmaq health consultant advocated for the change and then got to smudge her own twin sister and new nephew under the policy. Selena Alders reports.
But the smudging is the actual motion of brushing the smoke when they're burning over your being. And so you go again from head to toe, and it's like to clear your mind to think good things, and your ears to hear good things, your eyes to see the good things, your mouth and your voice so you speak good things. Really, it's just empowering to be one of the first people to bring that here to the IWK.
Courtney Pennell has fought for families to have the option to smudge their newborns for years. This is her twin sister Brittany and her newborn Beau, who's less than a month old. Both her and her son were smudged during and after the birth. She's the first Mi'kmaq woman to have it done at the IWK.
Knowing that the policies and procedures were published just days before Beau came into the world was like he had been kissed by Creator and chosen to be the first Mi'kmaq baby to be smudged at birth. So we feel pretty empowered.
Does it feel good?
Sometimes.
What does it feel like?
It feels like medicine in your chest.
Before the new policy came into place, people were not allowed to smudge inside the hospital. There were concerns about the ceremony setting off smoke alarms. But now they're turned off for a short period of time for Indigenous mothers who want to smudge.
Particularly important because our societies are matrilineal, and so we really embrace our women and our two-spirit people that have that feminine component. We hold them in the highest regard because they are the givers of life. And so in our culture, it makes me super emotional, but women and children are it.
Brittany says she was so grateful to be able to smudge during the birth of her son, but the fact that it was her twin sister who made it all happen is all the more special.
It makes it I'll cry. So much more impactful. And I'm so proud of her. We're so proud of her for all the hard work and all the fight and the dedication that she puts in the work, and she's our medicine in our family as well. So to watch her so dedicated in her role and fight for the ways of our people.
A popular hiking trail to a waterfall in the Vanderfoof area has been destroyed by fire. Just 2 weeks before it happened, filmmaker Darren Rigo was there documenting the terrain. Now it's feared the scenic site is gone. We spoke with him earlier today.
You can imagine the most beautiful picnic in the world there. It was wonderful. I would say the first half of the trail is this like beautiful winding boardwalk that just kind of winds its way through the upper part of the trail. I was blown away. As someone who's never been out in that area, I expected like a rough dirt trail, but it was sweet. The boardwalk ends, and then that's kind of when the steep descent begins. And you start to hear the creek kind of babbling off in the distance. And as you're going lower and lower, you kind of are met by the roar of what I then learned was the waterfall. And you kind of cross over the creek, and then you get to approach it head on. I haven't seen a waterfall that size in central BC ever. It just, took my breath away. It's a beautiful little rocky beach around it. There's a picnic table with like a fire pit. It looks like a wildfire has totally destroyed at least the upper part of the trail, and I want to keep my fingers crossed that maybe the lower part of the trail could have been preserved, but I can't imagine that. I mean, those photos look terrible. Like that, those flames are, 20, 30 feet tall. It looks awful. I'm grieving it right now, and I think coming to this idea that, I kind of want to make a bit more of a point to see some of my favorite spots, over the next couple summers. And I think we maybe have to start saying goodbye to some of our favorite things. If we see them, it could be the last time. I wish I'd maybe stopped and paused a little longer to reflect and take it in. We were working that day, so we were enjoying it, but we were kind of mind on task. And if I'd maybe stopped for a moment and just kind of taken it in and appreciated it a little bit more, I'd just encourage everyone to do that.
More wildfires also means more smoke and an increased risk to air quality around BC. Smoke has reached hazardous levels in Prince George. Thousands of area residents have been visiting the Pine Central Mall to escape the hazy air. Last year, the mall took extra steps to capture any smoke that sneaks through the doors and windows. Paulo Branco is the mall's operations manager. He says he felt a responsibility to give people in his community a safe space to breathe. And Paulo joins me now. So, Paulo, tell us what you've been doing over the last few days to increase air quality in the mall.
Yeah, so one of the major things that we've done here is we preemptively installed carbon filters on our rooftop HVAC units to kind of help filter the air as it comes into the mall. And then as it recirculates, filtering it again. We've also deployed a bunch of air scrubbers, HEPA air scrubbers, to kind of help filter out any smoke that's within the center that's infiltrated in as doors and things like that open. And we're just constantly monitoring air quality. We've got real-time air quality sensors that we're keeping an eye on just to see the impact of what we're doing.
Well, that's, quite the steps that you guys are taking. So the Pine Mall, as I understand, is Northern BC's largest indoor shopping center, and you have about, 400 employees there. So this is not just for the community, but also the people that work there too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For us, health and safety is kind of at the top of mind for us. And, naturally everybody assumes the public, which is important to us, but the employees that work here day in and day out and are here all day, every day, that they're important to us as well.
And so, Paulo, you and your team, you've created a kind of unofficial clean air shelter for the community. What's the reaction been like from customers and your employees then?
You know what, fairly positive. You know, I was walking through the center yesterday, just kind of, you know, constantly kind of roving around and just seeing how things were going. And, you know, we had a family walk by one of our hair scrubbers and they were kind of looking at it, you know, with a funny look. And we have a bit of a sign on it and they kind of just looked at it and said, you know, that's really cool. So those small things, you know, make me feel pretty good and, you know, gives us a bit more fuel to kind of keep going with these things.
And are you actually seeing people coming in to seek refuge?
I think so. I think just anecdotally, in the last couple of days, you know, I think we've seen some more foot traffic, especially with being summertime and kids being out of school. I think there's probably a little busier than a normal, you know, Wednesday afternoon and Thursday afternoon. So I think analytically we can say it probably helps out.
Okay, great. Thanks for talking to us today, Paulo Branco from Pine Mall in Prince George.
Thanks so much.
As many as 125 homes damaged in the Ottawa area after a tornado touches down in the nation's capital. Why millions were sent warning messages. That's next.
Look almost anywhere on the downtown skyline and you'll see the signs of a construction boom. This will be a record year for condominium starts, and along with that come the cranes, the noise, and the sales gimmicks. The question is, are there enough buyers out there for all those buildings? The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation says yes, the condo market is in pretty good shape. The supply is huge, but the demand is keeping pace. And it has some good news for local buyers. The median price for condos is coming down. Last year, it was about $254,000. So far this year, it's $234,000. That's a drop of about 8%.
Price points under $200,000 is the biggest sector of the market. And then 2 to 225 is okay. And after 225,000, I think you're leaving affordability.
This building site is part of the reason why, part of a shift towards smaller, more affordable condos. They're aimed not at the offshore investor, but at the local buyer. Next year, there will be almost 200 suites here. Average size, less than 700 square feet. Average selling price, $164,000.
Okay, these suites have been pre-sold. On November 1st last year, there was 189 suites sold in an afternoon. And 43 suites were sold in Hong Kong, and the other 142 suites, 47 suites were all done locally.
The units between 700 square feet and 1,000 square feet, that is where the market is today.
Ozzy Jurek says it's a buyer's market out there, but not everything is a good buy, and he urges caution.
I would be careful on which building I would buy in. You know, there's a number of buildings have been redesigned. They were built originally as 1,500 square foot units and they've been redesigned to 800. And is the plan still viable? Secondly, how much offshore investment is in the tower that I'm investing in? Because an offshore investor's motives may be different than a local buyer's. And if they all were to sell at one time, it would depress the price in that building.
No one expects the luxury market to bottom out completely, but if there's uncertainty, that's where you'll find it.
The only area to be nervous is maybe in whether the price is 350 or 450, where condos have been built strictly for the investment flip. And that's investor driven, that's not the sort of product.
Julia Nunes, CBC News, Vancouver.
Environment Canada has confirmed at least one tornado touched down in the Ottawa area this afternoon. One person suffered minor injuries, and as CBC's Nicole Williams reports, dozens of homes were left damaged.
You can see the roof, like this one is come off.
Anne Ingo says she was working from her home office this afternoon when this happened. A moment of horror as a tornado touched down and ripped its way through this southwest Ottawa neighborhood. Environment Canada issued a warning just moments before it hit.
It's so terrible. I stay beside of the windows, and the sound is so terrible. It's broken the windows, and wow, the sound is so terrible. I had to run to the second floor. You see the damage like that? I had to run down.
Through the streets, neighbors emerge from their homes in a state of shock.
Everything is just like destroyed. It's completely destroyed. Like, I just wanna hug my boys and see them like they are safe around me, and that's all, but it's so scary.
The tornado was short-lived. People here saying it lasted just 30 seconds, still long enough to leave its mark.
I felt like my whole house is shaking. First, I told my husband, I was like, I think we're gonna die or something.
This woman and her family moved in just a few years ago into their brand new home, now one of the worst damaged.
You can see our garage door is broken too. Glass is all over on the floor. It came from all the way over there, and our bikes are gone. We had like a basketball net here. It's gone too. Like our garbage bins, everything is gone. Like, it's just shocking.
Everywhere you turn, another devastating picture of the neighborhood, and nearly 2,000 people left without power.
I want to thank the emergency workers who have sprung to action today to help families affected by the tornado, and want to express my sympathy to those families, to the residents who were affected by this.
Police and firefighters have spent much of this afternoon going door to door to make sure that everyone is okay. Officials say it is going to take time to assess all the damage before repairs can even begin. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Ottawa.
After a heavy storm in the Montreal area, the city is wading through its aftermath. CBC's Sarah Levitt has more on the torrential downpour that's flooded homes and closed roads.
It came rolling in from the west. First, the winds. Then menacing clouds blanketing the cityscape. And at last, a torrential downpour. Cell phones screamed with official tornado watch warnings from Environment Canada. Take cover immediately if threatening weather approaches. It did. The deluge caused almost immediate flooding, with cars rolling slowly through this highway, only to be stopped by the rising waters.
This is wild, y'all.
On another highway, some weren't as lucky. Across the city, underpasses rapidly filled, an army of tow trucks deployed to help. A local bar partly flooded, its patrons unperturbed. North of Montreal in Mirabel, Environment Canada confirms a tornado did touch down. The town reported no injuries and no damage. In all, 50 to 100 millimeters fell in just over an hour. But as fast as the storm rolled into the area, just like that, it was over, with the sun shining as if nothing had happened. Now, though, the cleanup begins. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
A river running through New Delhi has reached its highest levels in 40 years, leading to evacuations and closures. Neha Punya has more on how heavy rain has led to more than 100 deaths in the last 2 weeks.
It's no longer raining, but the flood waters have accumulated in the city's roads, and that's making daily life very tough. The river Yamuna, which is the lifeline of Delhi, it provides a landlocked city with all of its water needs. It's now flowing 3 meters above the danger mark, and a neighboring region is also releasing more and more water into the river because they too are dealing with a flood-like situation. So that water is now spilling out into localities cities onto Delhi's main arterial roads that have been shut for traffic. We've seen how in some regions the waterlogging is neck deep. People have been wading out of their homes, trying to take whatever belongings they can with them, but some people have been stranded, which is where the National Disaster Response Force has been deployed. The summer monsoon is what brings most of India's rainfall to the country. It's the lifeline for the country's farmers, who make up about 60% of the country's population. But with climate change, we have seen the monsoon become far more devastating and far more intense. We've seen how this has impacted the poor of the city. 16,000 people have been evacuated. Many of them, though, refusing to leave their homes. They're saying they don't want to let go of their belongings. They don't know what or even when they'll be able to return. But it speaks of how climate change is a reality for millions living in South Asia. Neha Punia, CBC News, New Delhi.
The World Health Organization has listed aspartame as a possible carcinogen. News of that declaration leaked 2 weeks ago, prompting questions about the real risk of the popular sugar substitute. Paige Parsons now with the detailed report and the questions that remain.
100% sugar-free, gluten-free as well.
This Edmonton baker is an expert at making things sweet without sugar. Her shop carries all kinds of sugar-free products, but one ingredient you won't find here, aspartame.
I've heard nothing but bad things about aspartame.
Today, the World Health Organization's cancer research arm declared that aspartame is possibly carcinogenic to humans, but it comes with some caveats.
We have, in a sense, raised a flag here, indicating that we need to clarify much more the situation. It's not, something which we can dismiss at this moment.
Found in products like diet soda and chewing gum, aspartame is one of the world's most commonly used artificial sweeteners. The WHO's declaration follows a wide review of published evidence. Potentially carcinogenic puts aspartame in the same category as using cell phones, meaning there's limited evidence linking it to cancer. On a scale of various carcinogens, aspartame is less of a potential risk than red meat.
We're not advising companies to withdraw products, nor we are advising consumers to stop consuming altogether. We're just advising for a bit of moderation.
You'll find aspartame.
The recommended safe daily limit for aspartame is staying the same. Hitting that daily max would mean drinking between 9 and 14 cans of diet soda.
The natural human behavior is that if something is a little bit dangerous, it's very dangerous, and potentially the sky is falling down. But certainly in this case, it is not.
Still, the WHO's declaration is a signal to researchers.
We need more research, and I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of research coming down the pipeline now, because we really need an answer to this question.
Health Canada regulates aspartame as a food additive. It says it will review the WHO's findings to determine if any action is needed. Paige Parsons, CBC News, Edmonton.
She's only 8 years old, and she's ripping up the BMX track and turning heads around the country. Why the BMX scene in Nanaimo is so hot right now. That's next. Hordes of baby gulls are causing a flap at a mall parking lot in Prince George, creating chaos for drivers. Those juvenile gulls there can't fly just yet, so they've been wandering around Parkwood Mall's parking lot. Their nests are up on the mall's roof. Cars have hit dozens of birds, inundating a local animal rescue group. The mall says there are currently no plans to remove the gulls. Experts say they will learn to fly in about a week or two. Seagulls are protected under Canada's Migratory Birds Convention Act. Well, 8-year-old Monroe Lambert is a Nanaimo-based BMX biker who's ripping up the race course. She's ranked first in Canada for her age group, and as Claire Palmer reports, her ascent is the latest instance of the island city's dominance in the world of motocross.
It's hard to miss the 8-year-old as she whips around the track. Monroe Lambert's been on a bike since she was just 3 years old and has her eyes on the prize.
Maybe going to the Olympics. You should try it. It's really fun, but it might be scary sometimes.
Monroe is prepping to head off to nationals this weekend in Vernon. Her coach expects her to place in the top 3.
Seeing her go from a little 3-year-old toddler running around to being like a nationally ranked rider, you know, national 1 in her age group in Canada, and I was with her down in the States last month in Oregon for a race and competing with the top riders in the States, so seeing her grow because of the facility that we're fortunate to have has been really cool.
Monroe isn't the only girl tearing up the track in Nanaimo.
Really fun riding with a good group of girls and kind of just growing together with them. Oh, it's so cool. I love seeing her ponytail go at the back, and yeah, it's just amazing to see how fast she's progressed. It's like, she's so fast, especially for her age.
Berkheimer credits the bike community in Nanaimo for pushing out so much talent. He says it's what drew him to moving here.
September 2017, we took a trip to visit. The bike park had only been open for a month, and 6 months later, we were in our new home 5 minutes down the road, and 5 and a bit years later, it's still my favorite place to ride.
In recent years, the community has come together to invest in bike infrastructure in Nanaimo. The Steve Smith Bike Park was funded by a long list of sponsors back in 2017, and the city just opened a new mountain bike skills park in Harewood.
The bike culture here is a bit different than other areas because it's not one-sided. It's not just the racers, it's not just the jumpers. It's not just for boys. You know, little girls can get rad too.
Building a safe and unique environment where young riders can grow into future champions. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Nanaimo.
Isn't she something else, Darius?
That she is.
Oh my goodness, only 8, so good. No fear. She
I know.
Goes for it. You much of a BMXer yourself?
Oh, definitely not. And definitely not when I was 8 years old. I probably wouldn't be standing here today. When I was 8, I fell off a trampoline. Not just an trampoline, one of the ones with the nets around them. I somehow got bounced off and broke my arm. So definitely not doing BMX when I was 8.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Just bouncing up and down, even that wasn't so good for you.
No.
But you know what? You are a science brain, so tell me, what have we got in the weather front going on?
Well, before we come here to BC, I just wanted to jump back about 10 minutes to when we were talking about those tornadoes that touched down in Ottawa. Looking at this map, you can see that footage we saw where it touched down in the suburb, just as intimidating on the radar. We can see this long line of lightning strikes, these storms passing through the province. So really something affecting Ottawa, Montreal. Now it's in Quebec City. We can see those severe thunderstorm warnings still in place for Quebec City, passing down into Vermont, where they saw that flooding earlier this week. So really not doing so well there. Fortunately, nothing like that here in BC. Pretty calm day for the southern parts of the province. Still got those lightning storms happening in the northeast. Looks like we'll have those for a few days yet, and really just smoke through the central parts of the province. That's the big weather story today. And into tomorrow. You can't really see it here, but here where we're having sun in Prince George and through to the coast, that's all going to be smoke. Plenty of thunder showers still in the northeast tomorrow, but really calm day here in the south. Nothing but sun and a few scattered clouds and a few degrees above seasonal. And that's the same story here in Vancouver. We're going to be looking at a couple degrees above seasonal. We might hit 30 if you're further inland for the weekend. It's not until early next week that we see those temperatures come back down. Chance of some showers. I don't know about you, but I'm hoping for them because we could really use them. And then back up to high temperatures towards the end of the week.
Oh yes, I was telling our UBC prof, we are praying to the rain gods. We want those showers. Okay.
Oh, we do.
Thank you, Darius.
Thanks.
Every week, Lisa Christensen sets your social calendar with a look at an event you might want to take in. And today, she's setting up an annual event that earlier this year looked very much in doubt. Take a look.
Well, it's quiet now, but this weekend, the sound of folk music will be everywhere at Jericho Park. We are here watching them set up for the Vancouver Folk Music Festival. What does it feel like to you to be here?
It's exciting. I worked for the festival for almost 15 years, way back in the early days, and it's just taking me back.
And we almost didn't have this festival.
We almost didn't have it.
What did it feel like to you when you thought that it wasn't going to come back?
It was really sad. And I just thought it didn't make sense to me that there wouldn't be a sincere and concerted effort to just help it survive. There's such a huge community that's been involved with this over 45 years, all the volunteers that have come through the gates, all the audience that's come through the gates over the years that love it.
So what is it going to feel like, do you think, on the Friday night when you get here and you see all the people and the stages are set up and everything?
You're going to make me cry right now. Oh. So that's probably what it'll be like for me.
Thank you very much for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me, and we're really excited to be back.
Good. Good. And here are some other things to get up to. There's the second weekend of the Greek Summerfest starting today. There's food and dance and all kinds of great ways to celebrate Greek culture in Vancouver. It all takes place at 4541 Boundary Road at East 29th. Tomorrow night, there's Chow Down Chinatown. Order takeout from any Chinatown eatery, bring it to the show, and enjoy an evening of kung fu movies, Sax with Eric, and China Trucker Funk. It takes place at David Lam Hall at the Chinese Cultural Center at 50 East Pender Street. The first annual Memorial Squamish Nation Youth Powwow 2023 kicks off this weekend at the Capilano Reserve Park. It's open to the public and tickets are only $10 for the whole day. I wonder if this is the green room. And that's it for Getting Out this week. I hope you get out to something this weekend. And if you do make it to the Folk Festival, come say hi. I'm emceeing on Saturday night. I think I might be a little bit early.
She came into Wimbledon very much the underdog, but a Ukrainian tennis star took on the world's best. Why the political backdrop is as nail-biting as what's on that court. Next.
Cape Breton Island was calling me, so went home, went online, looked online. First thing that popped up was the church.
When Bryson striker Lions came to Cape Breton on a downhill skateboarding trip, it was love at first sight. But for his budget, there was no place to stay. It's been 6 years since they moved into the 100-year-old Presbyterian church. They insulated it, added windows in the bell tower, and spent $10,000 to drill a new well.
You know, we kept everything that we could, and just to keep that energy, because it was the energy that brought us here. So, very magical old church, this church.
The hostel quickly became a hub for skiers, hikers, and skateboarders from around the world.
You know, being in the middle of the national park and all these trails and the beaches, we get tons of people that are, you know, traveling and looking to do outdoor exploring.
The pandemic brought about tough times, though. They couldn't continue to afford renovations with fewer guests.
And we have angels looking over us, but we have an old piano.
Then, gift cards, Easter dinners, and envelopes of cash began to show up at their door.
You know, this community taught me the true meaning of community. Like, I know community, but I didn't know this kind of community, you know, Cape Breton Island community. Like, people have had it hard on this side, and they sure know how to take care of each other, and it was so special, and I'll never forget that.
Risking it all and trusting that it would all come together, they say paid off, to maintain this as a healing place.
It was a no-brainer. It was like, the sign was there, but, you know, everything was against us financially, and you know, but it had to happen no matter what.
Yeah.
And so.
And it's just been so rewarding. Like, there wasn't any part of it that was easy, but it was just so worth it.
When Mary and Norm Campbell returned home from Alberta in 2019, they bought Vickers View in Big Bedeck. It's where Mary's family went for decades. But in recent years, there were only about 5 congregants.
It's a beautiful building, and it means a lot to the community, and it means a lot to us. So we were very fortunate to acquire it.
Once a church, library, and even post office, Mary and Norm tried to preserve the church's unique quirks. During renovations, they repainted, updated the sewage system, and took out walls and doors. A concert series was born to make use of the acoustics that only a church can have. Mary and Norm hope bringing people together through music will build a sense of community, the same way the church did years ago. Josepha Cameron, CBC News, Sydney.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. CBC Vancouver is the premier media partner of the 2023 Surrey Fusion Festival, July 22nd and 23rd. Visit the festive cultural pavilions, enjoy free live music and family activities, and make sure you drop by the CBC tent for your chance to win CBC swag. And the Herb Original is a new CBC British Columbia podcast. Stream it today on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Alina Svitolina's remarkable Wimbledon run is over. The tennis player, a symbol of hope and defiance for Ukraine, lost in the semifinals, but she gave her country a much-needed reason to cheer. And as Briar Stewart shows us, her fans could not be more proud.
Far from the prestige of Wimbledon, in Kyiv they were cheering on one of their own.
It's really important because she represents our country. She shows on the international level her place.
Alina Svitolina just returned to pro tennis this spring after having a baby in October. At Wimbledon, she defeated a number of top players and won over fans.
The fact that she's a mother and that she's come back and that also she's just got such great fight.
Svitolina is from Odessa and received an award from Ukraine's president this year for all of her fundraising. She's also donated some of her winnings. In the semi-final match, Svitolina got support from the crowd, but lost in 2 straight sets to Czech player Markita Vondrousova.
I just hope that, that Ukrainian people continue supporting me. It was really amazing. So, and just hope that I'm gonna get another chance.
Throughout her matches, Svitolina has made it clear she will not shake hands with Russian or Belarusian athletes. On Sunday, the crowd booed when there was no handshake after she played Belarusian athlete Victoria Azarenka. Russian and Belarusian players returned to Wimbledon this summer after being banned from the event last year. Local organizers were under a lot of pressure to include them because the players are some of the best in the world and they're competing in the other Grand Slams. Fans admit it's a tricky issue.
Perhaps you shouldn't merge politics with sport either, but yeah, it's hard.
This Canadian tennis writer says he too feels conflicted.
And I think maybe they shouldn't be here, but I think a number of people do feel that way as well. But people want to see the top players.
Wimbledon, like other sporting events, is still grappling with how to allow athletes to compete, even as organizers are criticized by some for not doing enough to condemn those countries waging war. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
And in the middle of all that, she revealed she is a Harry Styles fan as well. All right, that's it for us tonight on CBC News at 6. Thank you so much for joining us. A reminder to watch us on CBC Jam. I'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a good night.